the idea of India is about rethinking development itself. We have had a certain kind of trajectory of development which was given to us. And the 20th century offered you two big models. One was the model which was a very dominant model in the 20th century. Now we don't talk about it. That was the model of the Russian Revolution, which gave one kind of model of economic development, which said, nationalize all property, state captures everything, state does things. The second idea came to us through the dream of capitalism, which said, market decides everything. I'm just simplifying all these things. India is an idea which consciously moved away from both these options, which for the first time, and remember Mahatma Gandhi wrote this more than 100 years ago, which said, this kind of development, whether you do it through communism or you do it through capitalism, this is not available to human beings all over the world. This is something which came through statistics and other things much later, 6 or 7 decades later. But the kind of prosperity and growth that certain parts of the world have today, it simply cannot be given to the rest of humanity, because our earth does not have those kinds of resources. If the whole world were to wish to live the life like Americans do, we cannot live on one earth. We need 7 earths to be able to live like that. This is something Indians pointed out, which is not to say, so this was a different kind of dream, a dream which sought to develop, to combine. It was a simultaneous pursuit of growth, justice and equality. That is to say, growth, which is a necessary condition for being able to distribute, as Jawaharlal Nehru never forgot to remind us. But growth of the kind which would be able to distribute. Of course, we failed miserably in this idea. Unlike the first two ideas, this has been a miserable failure, and we should be honest enough to talk about it. Every year when HDRs come, I find it shameful. In the human development ranking, it's not so much the ranking that matters to me. I don't care whether it's 137th or whatever. What I care for is the fact that our performance in education, health and all the key indicators is absolutely disgraceful for any civilized country. Every year, Pratham, this NGO, brings out a report on the quality of education in rural India. Year after year, the report shows that less than 50% of our students living in rural India can read the ordinary textbook in their mother tongue of a level which is 3 levels below their own, which is to say, less than 50% students of class 5 can read textbook of class 2 in their own mother tongue. This is what makes me ashamed of being an Indian. Every now and then National Family Health Survey comes out with its report on how many anemic children we have in the country. What is the level of undergrowth and malnutrition children in the country? That is shocking, shameful, simply unacceptable for any civilized country. So in this third respect, you could say we failed miserably. Yes, we did. You could say we neither got growth nor did we get distribution. Yes, that's probably true. What we do have in the last 60 years, especially in the last 20 years, we have created some kind of a platform to be able to begin to address some of these questions. I know there are many Indians who would mock at this platform. I don't. To have some resources to be able to address some of these questions is a must. We have done that. So in the first edition of Idea of India in this respect, We perhaps all that we achieved was merely a platform to be able to address some of these concerns. What we also achieved, what we also retained, I should say, is simply the idea, as I said, that the Indian dream cannot be the American dream. Mahatma Gandhi said, enough for everyone's need, but not for everyone's greed. That has to be our idea, because our model of development clearly said whatever we achieve has to be compatible with what the rest of the world can get. It has to be compatible with what future generations need. It has to be compatible with what the nature requires. As I said, this idea of India, as you can now see, for me, this idea of India has ceased to be something which is bounded within the boundary of the India that we see. It is an idea which has relevance not merely for the boundaries of the state of India in the UN. It is an idea which has relevance for the entire humanity. If we have to survive, if this idea of India survives, there is hope for democracy in the world. If this idea of India survives, there is hope for diversities, which are increasing now, for diversities to be reconciled within political units. And if this idea of India survives, there is hope for development all over the world. This idea of India is up for renewal. However, just when the idea was up for renewal, just when some basic conditions were met, just when the first edition had done very well, this is where those in charge of India, those charged with the destiny of the country, the political leadership, the very political process which had given India so much in the 20th century, that appears to have exhausted itself. And what we witness all over is simply not merely decline of political leadership. Decline of political leadership is something that routinely happens after great movements. The second generation of leaders are normally not so tall people. What we have is an exhaustion of the creative force of politics. I know we don't associate the word creativity with politics because we associate all the muck with politics. For me, politics is not merely the name of all these dirty things that have happened. Politics was very much the soul, very much the driving force of whatever great transformations that took place in India of the 20th century. That force has kind of exhausted itself. Suddenly at that moment, there is loss of vision. 50 years ago, India was a nobody in the world in terms of its political power, in terms of its economic power. Yet, India's voice was heard in the international forum. And today, India has more economic power, more political power. No one cares very much for India because there is that Jawaharlal Nehru at that time spoke for vast majority of humanity. There was a vision, there was a moral force to what he spoke. Today, we have more power but less vision. Today, that idea of India has suddenly lost its carriers. And what we therefore have is, just when democracy needed to take the next step towards Swaraj, what is being offered to us? What is being offered to us is family Raj. And I must clarify that when I speak of family Raj, I do not speak only of the Gandhi family of the Congress party. Look around all the parties of India, with my 2 or 3 minor exceptions. Every single party practices family Raj. Those who do not practice in Delhi, practice it in the localities at the district level and the state level. When we want Swaraj, we are being offered soft authoritarianism. We need strong leaders. Usually, democracies do not go out for strong leaders because messages of strong leadership comes with lack of accountability. Implicit in this message of strong leader is, let me decide, don't ask too many questions. So, when we wanted to take the next step towards democracy, democratization and Swaraj, we are being offered either dynasties or authoritarianism. Just when we wanted to deepen diversity, after this extraordinary achievement of accommodation of diversities of the unknown kind, when we needed to take the next step to go to Iram Shamila, as I said symbolically, this is when we are being offered two kinds of vote bank politics. Divisive politics is being offered to us. One, which is very easily seen to be vote bank politics, because it speaks about one community, does not speak about another communities and so on. It is the dominant vote bank politics of our country. But the other, which is not seen as vote bank politics, is no less of a vote bank politics. The idea that India must be dominated by majority community is the worst vote bank politics of any vote bank politics. Those who want to make India into a community, this idea of Hindi, Hindu, Hindustan, is the idea which would destroy the very idea of India. If there is one big enemy, if there is one real enemy of the idea of India, it is the desire that one community must dominate this country. And I speak not merely as someone who happens to be morally opposed to such things. I also speak as someone who has empirically studied these things. Please study Sri Lanka. You don't need to do deep research. Go to Google, wherever, just do your elementary things. Just see what happened in Sri Lanka. The entire beginning of what turned out to be civil war in Sri Lanka, which has brought that country to brink of disintegration. The country is morally and spiritually and ideologically already disintegrated. And it all started with Sinhala only policy. Sri Lanka mein rehna hai to Sinhala bolna padega. This is where it all started. So like that move, which must have appeared like a move of unity, actually ended up destroying Sri Lanka. There are demands of doing the same in India. I keep joking with my friends that there are some who want a Hindu Pakistan. You know, why are we so envious of Pakistan? There isn't very much to be envious about. You know, so this, at a moment when our country was ready for deepening the idea of diversity, this is when we are being offered solutions which were problems of 50 years ago. We are being offered a divisive politics of two varieties. Just when India was ready to redefine the idea of development, we are being given stark choices. Either take growth or take distribution, justice. You won't get both. There are those from the old left who constantly want better distribution, justice, which is nice. But where do you get money to distribute from? On the other hand, you have now a very strong lobby, not a very strong lobby among Indians, but a strong lobby among opinion makers who simply say, more growth, more growth, more growth. Finally something will percolate down. Don't bother about distribution, just have more growth. For a country which had moved beyond such binaries, such simple divisions, we are being offered older solutions which have already been rejected in the 20th century. So, at a moment when the idea of India was up for renewal, for moving forward, we have a political class that wants to drag us backwards, that wants to offer us divisive solution, simple binary oppositions, that wants to negate the successes that we've had and actually wants to take us 2 steps backward. But there's something about India, something about this idea of India, that it persists. And what we have seen in the last 2 years is that the spirit of India has asserted itself despite its leaders, despite its state, despite its rulers. And this is something so remarkable about the idea of India, that it asserts itself just when it's being drowned. The Anna Hazare movement was not merely movement of Anna Hazare. I had the honor to say this in Annaji's presence from Ramlila Maidan, so I can happily say that again. That it was not a movement about Anna Hazare the person. Every small town and every village almost in India discovered its own Anna. They found that honest one man, which they never cared for in the last 20 years. They installed and started worshipping him. It was about India discovering its own spirit. You know, when you go to a temple, you worship. You're not really worshipping that piece of stone there. You wish to enlighten, you wish to throw focus on, you wish to draw light on that little corner in yourself, which is beautiful, which has those virtues which you do not find anywhere else. This is what Anna Hazare did to all of us. It brought in that hidden virtue within ourselves. This was not a movement for Lokpal. Lokpal happened to be the occasion. Lokpal happened to be that particular act that everyone spoke about. But it was a movement about Lokbal, which is to say, it was an assertion of people's power. So many of the people who participated in Lokpal movement did not really understand the legal niceties. Prashantji understood all those. Most people did not. But they simply said, these rulers are arrogant, they are corrupt, they are cheats. We'll teach them a lesson. This is what they understood. So it was in that sense a movement about Lokbal, people's power. It was a movement that led many people to make the transition from being subjects to being citizens. They were not praja, they became nagarik. And it was not a movement against corruption in the simple sense of bribery and graft. Corruption in India happens to be a summary name. It's a euphemism for the governance deficit that our country suffers from. For the lack of connect between citizen and the government. Citizen and those who enjoy power in their name. That gulf that divides the two, that gulf is what people call corruption. So, this movement, in that sense, was a movement which was about bridging this gulf. Corruption happened to be the starting point. Graft of an obscene variety happened to be the trigger. This movement, I would submit to you, was about the idea of India reasserting itself. The spirit of India coming back and demanding that a future for India, which was being denied to it by its political leadership. This is what Aam Aadmi Party is all about. Lots of friends have asked, why politics? I understand this question because we associate politics with everything dirty. We associate politics with something that nice people don't do. Kumar Bhai spoke from here and he also said, we don't want to do politics. I understand that expression, the way that expression is used. In a sense, that is our tragedy. That we have allowed that creative and transformative force of the last 100 years to become a dirty word. Politics was, as Kumar Bhai reminded me, politics was and has been the Yug Dharma of our times. What is Yug Dharma? Yug Dharma is something which in one particular age, you have no options about. Politics is one such thing. It may not be the Yug Dharma of all times. It is not the Yug Dharma of all countries. In the US today, you can do lots of nice things in this country without doing politics. Yes, you can. But in India of the last 100 years, and possibly next 50, I can't see any change right now. If you want to bring any substantial change in even one aspect of country's life, you shall encounter politics. And very soon you would have to make up your mind. You would have to say, okay, I wanted to ensure clean drinking water for every Indian. I thought I could do it with an NGO. I thought I could do it with a self-help group. I almost succeeded in one village. But when I wanted to take it to 10 villages, I encountered this Babu, who is being sheltered by this MLA, who is being protected by this chief minister, who in turn is instructing the DM. I have only two options. Either I say, all right, I'll do nice things, but not when they come up against a wall. I'll step back and I'll respect the wall. You can be a nice NGO, you can continue to do good work, and lots of NGOs have done very, very good work. I don't mean to despise what they are saying. Sometimes, some of them would say, no, I shall not stop when I confront a wall. I'll take on that wall. And taking on the wall, and that audacity in taking on that wall, in banging your head against the wall, is what politics is all about. We kept banging at this wall for a very long time, lots of Indians. And we Indians keep cracking jokes about ourselves. The usual jokes. There was one Indian, one Australian, one American, one Chinese. All those standard jokes that we all crack about all the time. Underlying those jokes is a certain pathology. Because underlying every joke is a tragedy. And that tragedy is a self-image of Indians. Where we said, yes, there is this wall and we can do nothing about it. That is what has changed. In the last 2 years, echoing what Kumar Bhai said, we kept going at that wall and we kept realizing perhaps that nothing can be done. But now we have come to a point where suddenly a small hope has taken birth. As they say in Hindi, choti si aasha. Wherever we go, people say to us, it's very hard. आप कर तो रहे हैं, अच्छा काम कर रहे हैं, ईमानदार लोग हैं, हिम्मत भी है, मगर ये मगरमच्छ लोग आपको खा जाएंगे, बीजेपी वाले, कांग्रेस वाले, सब आपको खा जाएंगे. I understand what they are saying. But the point is, for the first time after a very long period, Indians, ordinary Indians, have started at least looking at this possibility. This is what small hopes are all about. And all things in the world are made of small hopes, which have to be fulfilled. So why are we in politics? We are in politics because politics is the logical culmination of our struggle against corruption. There was no other way. Either we stopped and said, all right, we'll talk about small corruption, but we'll not talk about big corruption. Or we march ahead and say, we shall talk about all corruptions and tackle it and attack it everywhere. This is what has brought us to politics. What have we done so far? The party started in the month of October, was announced earlier. In the month of October, we formally said we would go ahead. 26th of November, we formed the party and formally launched it. We have worked on 4 tracks. In the afternoon, we'll talk in details about that. But I'll just mention those 4 tracks that we've been working so far. We created our constitution, we created an organizational structure, we created institutions. There's something unusual there. Arvind Bhai referred to that. I'll probably make a few points about that. Second, we have created an organization. And this is something which is not talked about by the media. Let me just mention that so far, Aam Aadmi Party has held district level conventions in more than 350 districts of India. And we have elected leadership in exactly the kind of convention that we have today. This kind of convention has been held in 350 districts of India. There are about 650 plus. So more than half the districts have held convention, leadership has been elected, and this is not a leadership which is appointed from Delhi. It has been elected from below. Third, this is what we call Mission Bunyad. Mission Bunyad was actually creating party organization. It's going on. We have reached second phase of Mission Bunyad now. Third track is we have tried to create a policy document for ourselves, which is our Vision Swaraj. Arvind Bhai mentioned that in his speech. Currently, we have about 40 policy groups working, and I've been asked by the party to coordinate all that work. Within a month or so, we hope to release tentative drafts of our foreign policy, defense policy, economic policy, agriculture, all various dimensions of it. We hope to release draft. We hope to get feedback, incorporate it, and in about 2 months or a little more, we hope to come up with a new agenda for India. We will come up with this country. The political party will come up in the country which will say to India, this is what we want India to be like. Fourth, we have kept up with Andolan. When we formed the party, we kept saying to our friends and volunteers, the choice is not between doing Rajniti and doing Andolan. We'll do both. And that's exactly what we have done. Those of us who watched the Delhi agitation on Bijli Pani, after 3 or 4 decades, the city of Delhi has seen an agitation which raised the questions of the last person in Delhi city. After a very long time, concerns of Aam Aadmi, Aam Aurat, and Antim Insan were foregrounded in Delhi's politics. So we've kept up with Andolan. These are the 4 tracks we've worked on. How are we different? Arvind and Kumar Bhai both have already spoken about it. Let me just list it quickly, but I'll be happy to answer the questions about it. Number 1, we are probably the only political party in the country which bans more than one person from a family from occupying any position. Shanti Bhushan ji is our revered person, he's our mentor, but because his son is a member of National Executive of our party, Shanti Bhushan ji cannot be executive member even of the Noida Sector 16 where he lives. 2, we have created a process of candidate selection of a kind which is unknown in Indian politics. We said this obscene business of ticket distribution from above will stop. These party leaders who distribute tickets and says, all right, my chamcha gets ticket, my chela gets ticket, and you must have, when you go to Delhi, you must have seen these obscene hoardings with Manmohan Singh, Sonia Gandhi, Rahul Gandhi, then the local chamcha and the local chela and everyone. Why are those things done? In the hope of getting ticket. We said, party workers from below will elect their representatives. Yes, the party leadership shall check their credentials. Yes, we'll verify that for honesty and other things. But the business of getting tickets will be done at the level of the locality, not at the level of party leadership. 3, we are one party which has ombudsperson. We have a party with a judiciary within the party, which is to say, if tomorrow you feel Yogendra Yadav is corrupt, talks about honesty but he's actually corrupt, you can actually write to the ombudsperson, the Lokpal of Aam Aadmi Party. The Lokpal will not even ask you whether you are a member of Aam Aadmi Party or not. Your complaint will be, you just have to send a complaint and some evidence. Lokpal will look into those evidence and give a verdict which shall be binding for the party. If the Lokpal says Yogendra Yadav should be thrown out of the party, he'll be thrown out of the party. I don't know of any other political party which has created this kind of a mechanism. And finally, it is a party which practices financial transparency. The point that Arvind Bhai said, every single paisa is accounted for, put up on the website. We hope to put up even our expenses on the website. I do not know of any other political party which practices this kind of transparency. Yes, we are different to begin with. Will we succeed? I do not want to give false hopes. I do not want to engage in rhetoric here. Arvind Bhai reminded us that this is one of the rare opportunities. In India, we know this window opens only once in a while. In 10 or 15 years, this window opened once. We have this kind of an opportunity. And we know that when this opportunity arises, we know from 1977, we know from 1989, we also know from similar occasions all over the country at different states and different points of time. Karnataka 1983, Andhra Pradesh at that time, all kinds of situations. That when this kind of an election takes place, ordinary voters pick a broom in their hand and they wipe out everyone. They just sweep them off. I do not know if that would happen in 2014. No one knows when these moments come. We have to be prepared for such moments to arrive. But there is a lot that we can do even before that moment arrives. I'll just mention 3 of those things and then wind up what I'm saying. You can change rules of the game. Thing about politics is that everyone at the top has decided some silent rules of the game. You will not talk about Robert Vadra. I will not speak about Ranjan Bhattacharya. This is the rule of the game. And then these two utterly outsiders Arvind Kejriwal, Prashant Bhushan, these kids walk in and they simply say, but the emperor is naked, and everything collapses. Rules of the game can be transformed by a small force which is determined, which is honest, which is what we have already begun to do. Robert Vadra was someone not... the file about Robert Vadra that we made public was with more than one editors of India. They were sitting on that file. They did not have the courage to talk about it. We made it possible for the media to talk about something. So we've started changing the rules of the game. And finally, a movement can bring new entrants into politics. Every generation has its idealist minority. Those idealists 50 years ago, 75 years ago came to the national movement. 50 years ago they came to politics. Today they don't want to go to politics. Today they want to go to an ecological club, environmental club, they want to save dogs, they want to serve trees, which is good. I don't mock at that. I think it's important. But I would much rather that a substantial chunk of that idealist youth comes to politics, because politics is the youth. And if Aam Aadmi Party succeeds in bringing even 1% of the idealist youth of today's India, young men and young women more than young men, if we succeed in bringing 1% of them to politics, no matter what happens to our party, we would have changed the fate of India. Friends, I began by saying that the idea of India beckons us all to realize it, to give it a second wind. I have argued, I have proposed that this idea of India is something which is of global consequence, which is something which is about the destiny of democracy in the world, which is about ability of people to live with diversities all over the world, which is about the idea of development and reshaping it for the next century. Movements have a long legacy. As I speak here today in the US, I'm conscious of the fact that this is the 100th anniversary of the Gadar movement. Gadar movement of 1913. It finished in 1913. This was a dream imagined by some Indians in the US who thought they would take a ship to India and liberate India. In its limited version, the dream did not work out. But that dream finally produced a Bhagat Singh. Bhagat Singh actually is directly the legacy of Gadar movement. Most of his ideas actually were shaped by Gadar movement. That dream transformed some of the best creative energies in Northwest India for the next almost 100 years. And this was a small chapter, a failed chapter in India's history. It reminds us that great dreams can sometimes be woven sitting far away from where you want them to be enacted. It reminds us that dreams have a long life even after they are shattered and broken. It reminds us that the idea of India is still alive, can be brought into being. And if we see the idea of India in this sense, we can turn to the world, not just to Indians living in India, not just to Indians living in the US, not just to NRIs and PIOs, but everyone on this Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. We can turn to them with some pride and say, the idea of India welcomes you. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, sir. Sir, you make us fall in love with politics, dirty politics, isn't it? So I'm sure you would have many questions and you'd like to listen him more. But I'm also getting requests that people are hungry, give us your 10 minutes break. So, friends, we have some refreshers there. Please grab it and come back in 10 minutes. Then we'll have the question answers. And we have many other things to offer. So please, finish it in 10 minutes so that we can wrap up all the other things in by 1 o'clock. Okay? So you have 10 minutes.
Was address of Arvind Kejriwal, and the 4 points you mentioned, that for this upcoming election you are going to field the candidates who are going to be of clean image and who doesn't have any bad record. But my question is that, isn't it going to be an uphill task for these good candidates, honest candidates, to fight against the corrupt and tainted leaders? And how are you going to face this challenge? Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
My name is Boris Dadaboy. I'm going to ask the same question I asked at Northwestern University. Only 2.7% of India's population pays taxes, federal taxes. An average Indian per capita income is $1,300, which roughly comes out to a contribution to the government in the form of octroi and sales taxes to 300 rupees, which is about 50 rupees every 2 months. Now, how can the government provide services when the contribution in the form of state sales tax and federal taxes is so little, how can an employee be honest and provide services?
Thank you, sir. We'll take the third question. Okay, we got him first.
So I'm Subramanian from Evanston. So you talked a lot about the idea of India. So this is something which is somewhat close to me. So I believe India has never been one country. It has always been several countries ruled by several kings. There are only 2 or 3 points in our history where a single kingdom has ruled over the entire geographical area that is called India. So, and you also talked about